Hello and what is up? It's your boy Real_Joshua, and yesterday I beat an Enel at locals. This is maybe not a big deal to some of you, but to people who play Doffy, maybe this means something a little bit more. I have recently re-picked up Doffy after playing a lot of Boa. I'm sorry to all the Boa players out there. I hope to pick her up again someday, but I'm really buckling down and trying my hardest to just win at all costs at this point. I want to get better at the game, and I feel like to do that, I want to play the best deck possible. First off, thank you all for watching. If you have not yet, please like and subscribe and join my Discord and Patreon. Those are linked in the description. Anyway, yesterday I went to DXN Provisions / DXN Outpost, which is a really cool card store over in Arcadia, California. I had been there a couple times, but I've wanted to go back to do a little sort of locals profile. So I hope to do another one of these again because I did not collect B-roll. I forgot. I'm really sorry about that, but it's a really cool shop. And I actually went in early to meet up with Boba Drea, who is a mainstay of the community. She's one of the first people that I played against. She's recently started getting into content creation, doing like over-the-board play videos. I played a warm-up game with her. I made a little bit of a screw up, but I ended up winning. And she's gonna have that over on her channel, so go check out Drea's channel. She's really cool, really nice person. Thank you, Drea, for meeting up with me beforehand and getting some practice games in. In this video, I'm going to go over all the games that I played at this local. I ended up going 3-1, spoiler alert. But I'm also going to teach you one lesson that I learned from each game, or at least I'm going to try to. I do have a different lesson that I learned from each game, and I will give you the secret sauce to what it took to beat the Enel that I learned this week. Here is the deck list that I ended up using this week. It is the deck that Joshua Impact Graham used in his Treasure Cup run. I believe he got first place with it. Highly recommend it. It's really good. I want to keep running with this version of the deck, at least for my locals right now. Keep in mind the 3 puddings in here. The first matchup was actually the most interesting, I want to say, and it was versus purple-black Luffy. This should be a relatively easy matchup for me, but I did not really see what I wanted, and I feel like I might have played suboptimally after that. I feel like I really need to button up when I do not get what I need to see. I need to get better at like getting there and knowing what I need to do. I'm looking at pictures of the board state that I will be showing on the screen. I'm not like reading my messages while I'm recording a video. Anyway, so here was my opening hand for this game. I had 2 Sengokus, 2 Weevils, and a Law, which I felt was really good because I would be able to use the Sengokus to draw into Jinbeis and I would be all set. I was going second, so I felt really good about this. However, after I played my Sengokus, I did not see any Jinbeis. I ended up picking up 2 Boas, so I had this like really bricked hand of Boa, Weevil, Law going into my 4-Dawn turn. So really what I wanted to do first and foremost was find my Jinbeis at all costs. So I used my Law to bounce back my Sengoku, bounce back their Zoro. I felt like that was a default play, right? I want to keep digging for Jinbeis, etc. Next turn, I played my Boa, hoping that my Jinbei would be on the next 3 cards because Boa is just such a strong card. I can essentially do what is similar to a Jinbei play by playing Boa and then leader affecting. But off the leader effect, all I saw was Mihawk, and so I brought out my Mihawk, and this is what my board looked like. Did end up attacking with my Law, and maybe that was not the right play. As you can see, my board here is 2 5Ks versus 2 5Ks, but with so many cards in hand, I felt like I could protect them. The only problem is that I only had 1 2K in hand at this point, and then a bunch 4 1Ks. So I didn't have a ton of resources to protect my board here, but I felt like it would be enough to protect my board and be able to build on this in the next turn. From this point in the game, my opponent was able to go 5-cost Sanji into Moria, into Kaido, into another Moria, and then they had another Kaido. It was hard to come back from that. The Frankie kept coming back and filtering their hand. It was just kind of brutal, and not seeing Jinbei until that later turn really kind of screwed me up, and I felt like I was going aggro as possible, but it was tough. I just couldn't get there. There was one turn where I swung at a Zoro when I could have swung face, and it was with my last swing, so I was afraid of dying on the next turn because if my opponent just swung face, I would be screwed. I had all bricks in hand pretty much, but I have to know my opponent is never going to swing for lethal in that position. With as many cards in my hand as I have, the opponent is just never going to swing lethal even though I don't have it. Like, I should not be afraid of a play that my opponent is never going to make, because I'm thinking, well, if my opponent swings here at me, I'm just dead because I have no counter in hand. But my opponent doesn't know that, and it's very unlikely for a Doffy to be as bricked as I was in that position. So I should just always swing at my opponent's leader and then use my counter to protect my board and not play around lethal that my opponent is not going to do. So I think that is the main lesson that I learned from this game. So in the next matchup, we went against Enel. A little bit of context about this, okay? I've had a lot of trouble with Enel in the past because the reason that a lot of people run him is because he counters Doffy. But there are ways to beat him. There is a specific strategy that you need to use when you are facing him. And I think it's very important that you keep all this stuff in mind, okay? I ended up seeing kind of the dream opener hand versus Enel as Doffy. I have 2 Peronas, Jinbei, Boa, and Pudding. This is the dream, guys. And the reason for this is, versus Enel, you do not want to be playing 4-cost Warlords early in the game, at least in the first like 3 turns. Okay, because the reason for that is that Enel's entire thing is that he outlasts you by amassing a bunch of cards in hand and killing one of your things on board every single turn, using his Kuzans, using his Gadatsus, using his Namis, and then later in the game using Raigos. Very easy for him to take down the stuff that you have on board, okay? So if you're playing these cards individually from your hand, or even like 2 at a time, you're gonna get screwed, you're gonna run into triggers, your board's gonna demolish itself, okay? So what I ended up doing was, on turn 1, I played Perona. Turn 2, I leader effect into my Weevil, which is really, really good because your opponent is going to have to attach Dawn to their leader to attack the Weevil, and you've gotten it for free. It's a +1 for you because you have drawn and played the Weevil, and then the Weevil has drawn you a card, as opposed to having to play something from your hand. So now my hand is just getting bigger every turn, okay? While I have these threats to my opponent and I'm swinging at their life. Turn 3, I do the same thing. I actually am able to get a Law. I believe I used a second Perona to stack my deck and then leader effect again so that I could get like the best choice of what I'm taking off my deck. What's really nice about using Law here is that I bounce it back to hand and then my opponent has to bottom deck one of their cards. And then I have an extra 2k in hand. So again, I'm able to amass my hand. My opponent's hand is getting bigger because he's not really playing stuff off of his hand, and I have a Pudding to punish that. And I have a Jinbei to start stacking the board, okay? Next turn, I start going off. So I played Jinbei, Boa. Boa found me a Jinbei, which I then leader effected out a Jinbei into a Moria, which drew me back a 2k into hand. That is insane. Look at this board. Very hard for my opponent to do anything about it. My opponent played a Gadatsu, so that killed one thing on my board, the Boa. But then the following turn, look at this, guys. My opponent has only played 2 cards, the Shirahoshi and the Gadatsu, this entire game. Has spent the rest of his turns swinging at my face or swinging at my board. And then I'm able to go Pudding plus 5k, 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 leader effect into a Moria. And so look at this board. My opponent's hand is 5 cards. They're at 1 life, and their board has a single Gadatsu on it pretty much. So from here, it was a pretty easy dub. He didn't really have much to follow that up with. So yeah, it felt really, really good. It felt like I wasn't leaking any value out of my hand early. I didn't like expend a bunch of my resources early. The game would be quite a bit different if he was able to see his late game drops and was like popping everything with Yamatos and stuff. He did play 1 Yamato, I believe, but because I had so much on the board and I was able to just use all the cards and counter that I had amassed in my hand to counter out of his swings, I was just able to get lethal pressure every single turn. And my opponent just could not get out of that because he can't heal enough fast enough. So it was really good. There was actually a moment where my opponent, he got a Raigo off of one of his triggers, and then later after the Pudding, he got a Nami off of his triggers, but the Nami didn't work because he didn't have any triggers in his hand because I had Puddings and he didn't get any triggers in hand. Very unfortunate for my opponent, but that's how it shakes out sometimes, and I just had a great hand. So what's even crazier is that like you have the option to bounce back your Pudding if your opponent does start amassing a hand again, and it just gets real nasty. So play it this way, play those first couple turns that way. I'm gonna get more into like the transition into the late game if I do encounter that in future locals. But yeah, for now, hope that sauce is helpful for you. Next game was against Blackbeard, against my buddy Andrew, who I played, if y'all remember, in San Diego. I got paired against him. We were staying in the same hotel, drove down to San Diego together for the regional, and then we got paired against one another in the first round out of more than 1,000 players. So he's playing Blackbeard now, I'm playing Doffy now. Obviously a bad matchup for Blackbeard. He did not leader effect going into turn 2, and it just so happened that I had like the nut hand to take advantage of that. Unfortunately for him, I was able to go teach into Jinbei Weevil. So just absolutely brutal. And from there, you just kind of keep attacking leader, keep using your searchers to attack for 5k. That's really, really strong versus Teach, because he either has to get rid of a card, and every single card is very important for Teach because he's discarding one to activate leader effect every turn. And you just keep on attacking and attacking and attacking and using your leader effect as much as possible, and you'll get there. Pretty cut and dry, and that's just because of the nature of the matchup, guys. For Teach, sorry, you're gonna have to wait until next set, until this matchup gets better. And then we go on to the final matchup, which is versus a Pluffy. This is another one where I just kind of got the nuts, dude. I went first, I rolled first, which obviously Pluffy really wants to go first, so when he can't, it feels really bad for him. But I went 1 Dawn, didn't play anything. 2 Dawn, I played Teach into Weevil, and then Weeviled. And then look at my hand, guys. If you see this hand and this board state, this is the dream of what you want as Doffy. Okay, so 3 Dawn, I had my Weevil, which drew something. And then going into the 5 Dawn turn, this is the play. Okay, I was able to play Weevil for 4 Dawn. Okay, he draws a card, and then I have 1 Dawn left. With that Dawn, I play Jinbei from top of my deck with leader effect rested. And then I play Law, I bounce back my Jinbei, and then I have a 6k standing, a 6k standing, and a 5k standing versus my opponent's board, a 5-cost Kid. So my opponent went Eustace Captain Kid, 5 cost, into Luffy Taro plus Zoro Juro. So pretty good curve for the opponent. But then on 7 Dawn, I just gravity bladed, swung 5k, 5k, 6k, 6k. And so I have 3 rested characters versus a Luffy Taro and Luffy Pluffy leader. I have my Perfume Femur in hand. I have another Jinbei in hand. And if my opponent starts swinging at my board, I have so many resources to build up my board, and that's what I do. I keep playing stuff out, and the game from there is pretty simple. The last turn, my opponent plays Law Blocker, Onami, plus Robin. And unfortunately for him, I have the Perfume Femur in hand, and that's game. 3-1 felt pretty nice. One thing that I really want to get better at here, guys, is I want to get better at the turns where I have a Teach in hand and I have Moria or like other value generator in hand, figuring out how I'm gonna play those turns, because it feels like there are so many lines for these turns and I don't know how to think about them. It feels like there are so many things going through my mind, and I need a way to simplify that. I need a way to boil that down so that I'm not taking so much time to think about the lines, and I have more time to think about just the tactics and strategy on a macro level. That's what I want to improve on here. That's what I need to be grinding out. If any of y'all have tips for that, I would love if you could share those in the comments. But yeah, shouts out to DXN. 3-1 felt pretty nice, especially for just getting back into the swing of Doffy. I hope to keep getting better with this deck so that I can see some results in the bigger competitions. I've not been playing the treasure cups. At the time that I was doing this, I wasn't in super like competitive head place. I was more just like, I would rather just make more content than like play in a treasure cup. But now I'm more feeling that competitive itch, so I'm going into full try hard mode here. So yeah, shouts out to DXN, a great spot to go. I think their interior is one of the most interesting interiors that I've ever seen in a card shop. It's got these like beautiful wooden rafters, and the decorations in there are awesome. All these snacks are around the corners, kind of flanking the entire store. If you're ever in the area, ever in Arcadia, go check out DXN Provisions. I believe it was a box split between the top 4 placing people plus like judge packs. I think first place might have gotten a winner pack with that as well. Don't quote me on that though. So cool pricing, $10 entry, and just a really cool place to play. So if you're ever in Arcadia, go check out DXM Provision. Shouts out to them. And again, thank you to Boba Drea and everyone I ended up playing against yesterday. Shouts out to all y'all. And yeah, see you in the next locals report. Again, it's your boy real_Joshua. Check me out on Twitch at real_Joshua as well. I'm also on Twitter at hi there Josh. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Later.